Innocent spouse relief. Innocent spouse relief is a fairly hot topic of conversation, particularly among family lawyers and those individuals who are going through separations, because oftentimes those people feel that they are wrongly injured by their spouse or significant other's tax liability. Innocent spouse requires several things, and I want to be clear about those from the outset. So first of all, you must have some sort of understated tax on the return that you had no knowledge to. So if your spouse runs a business and they understated their tax liability and you had no knowledge of it, then you could potentially be a candidate for innocent spouse. You also have to show that when you signed the return, you had no knowledge of the liability and did not benefit from it. That is a particularly tricky proposition, because oftentimes if one spouse is cheating on the return or understating liability, then the other spouse is receiving some indirect benefit of that, whether it's increased cash flow to the household or some other financial gain. The IRS will not grant innocent spouse relief in those cases. For a more detailed determination on innocent spouse liability, we do recommend that you speak to a practitioner. However, there's also something called separation of liability relief. Separation of liability relief is a little bit easier to get than innocent spouse. But essentially what you're doing is asking the IRS to partition the liability between the taxpayer and their spouse and divide it in terms of their appropriate share. This happens all the time in audits. It's a really useful tool to use. If your spouse, or if your particular client doesn't qualify for innocent spouse relief, separation of liability relief might be another avenue for them and should be considered. Finally, there's a more general term of equitable relief for people who don't fall in those two buckets. It is very difficult to get general equitable relief from the IRS. Usually when they grant innocent spouse relief, they like to do it based on one of those two criteria. Again, it is something that we recommend that you talk to somebody who's a professional in and who knows this area of law. It's something I would not tackle as a taxpayer or as a general practitioner. So it's really important that you get some guidance on this going forward in order to give your innocent spouse claim the best chance for success.